Pints and Politics. I'm your host, Dan Parsons. Hey, we're not at our regular setting, and some of us are not even in our regular attire. We are, as you know, our regular viewers and listeners to Pints and Politics. This is a podcast about, as the name implies, pints and politics. We enjoy locally Nebraska craft beers, and we talk about the issues of the day that matter to a lot of people. So today, we're in the portico. We're in Chef Kevin Shin's beautiful backyard patio, and we're not going to drink craft beer. We may talk a little bit about politics, but we're going to talk about whiskey, specifically rye whiskey. And so let me introduce, and we've got a panel. We don't just have one guest or two guests. We've got a panel to talk about rye whiskey tonight. And so let me introduce no stranger to Pints and Politics, Chef Kevin Shin. Chef, you were episode number 14 at Code Beer. Mm-hmm. I don't remember what we talked about, but we drank some good
beer. We did.
You were in episode 28, which was back here a year ago, April in 20. And now this is episode 38. Look how much we've progressed.
And welcome to the portico.
And we are in the portico, and we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about the portico, Chef Kevin Shin's latest adventure. But let me introduce the rest of the panel. We have a panel. Dr. Andrew Bateman from Clear Vision. No.
Yeah.
Clear Vision
Eye Care.
Eye Care in Fallbrook.
Yeah.
And Dr. Bateman, but his friends call him Drew.
Yeah.
The people that drink whiskey with Drew call him Drew. And Drew is the reason we're here, because in addition to his practice out in Fallbrook, his eye care practice as an optometrist, Drew has been the past president of the Nebraska Optometric Association, which is a client of Parsons Public Relations. And Drew is the host of the new podcast, Beyond 2020.
Yeah.
And so welcome to
Thank you.
Pints and Politics. Your
glad to be here.
inaugural adventure.
I appreciate it. Episode 38, you said?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for having me.
But Drew, the reason we're here is because every time I'd see Drew on one of our NOA podcasts, Beyond 2020, he'd say, when are we doing a podcast on whiskey? And so here we are. We're doing a podcast on whiskey. And certainly last but not least, we finally convinced Kim Remington to come from behind the camera, in front of the camera. Kim, as our viewers and listeners know, is the operations manager for Parsons Public Relations. And Kim is also a fan of whiskey. And so Kim kept saying, as Drew did, when are we doing a podcast about whiskey? So, Kim Remington, thanks for being here.
Thank you. And the last time I think I was visible on Pints and Politics was about 2 years ago when we were drinking Chef Kevin's Old Fashions. Dan was making them tableside, so to speak, and there must be something about whiskey that gets me to Pints and Politics. So.
Well, we're delighted that the three of you could join us today. So, Kevin, you are our tour guide.
Okay.
And we're going to be sampling some rye whiskeys, and we usually do this in private, but we're going to do it in public. And so tell us about the first rye whiskey that you've chosen for us tonight.
Well, let me give you a little bit of backstory on why rye for me. Why are we picking rye? As a chef, it's really important for me to give my guests an experience, especially an experience that they've never had before, and that's sport for me at the table. Is if I can change your mind about something, open your eyes to something, give you a different experience of something, that makes it all the more worthwhile. What that means is I've got to educate myself, and over the years I call them my hobby horses. But I find interests that my restaurant staff used to laugh and make fun of me for, especially like when I was in my salt phase and learning about salt, and probably had 15 different salts, and people would, how much was that, chef? $50? And that was about $75. But I throw myself into understanding certain things that fascinate me. Well, rye whiskey came to the fore for me about a year ago, when I was traveling, visiting a friend in Pennsylvania, and came. He had he was a whiskey of the month club, so he had several he had not even tried, and many of his friends didn't drink whiskey, so he found it providential that the chef shows up. And so he puts out about 5 of his whiskeys, and there was a rye whiskey from Pennsylvania that captured my attention, and we're going to sample that later.
Okay.
So that got me started on this rye train, and that's where
Here we are.
Yeah, so I'm inviting you into my rye world. I'll spare you a lot of the geeky details, because really what matters is, do you like it?
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I'm sure we will have viewers and listeners who want to get into that geeky stuff, but here's what we'll do. If there's things that you want to highlight that we don't get to, we'll put them in the notes at the end of the show.
Sagamore Spirit from Baltimore, Maryland. You're going to notice it's going to be a little hot in the alcohol. Get probably smell that, but you're going to smell the uniqueness of the grain. You can tell that it's not a corn whiskey, but it is a rye grain whiskey.
We usually toast, and so with our craft beers. So
There we are.
Cheers, Sam.
All right.
So it will open up and kind of mellow out as it warms up in your hand. But I find this is a really nice boutique rye that's great for making cocktails, old fashions, and so forth. So.
Back to your comment you said about learning or getting interested in rye in Pennsylvania. I don't know if this was something that you discovered when you were learning about it, but isn't Pennsylvania like pre-Prohibition? Isn't that kind of the center of the rye universe? Or at least there was a couple big distilleries there that produced a bulk of the rye.
That detail I don't know, but they did it right whenever they resurrected this recipe from pre-Prohibition. Very grainy, and that's what I want to experience in a whiskey. I want to know that it's unique to what I'm, it's not just like, well, what is this? That's what I look for in anything that I offer to my guests is give them something really distinct. So I don't know the exact history, but they did an amazing job of resurrecting this batch recipe and crafting a most unusual and flavorful whiskey.
When you had the rest bread and cup, so our viewers and listeners probably know Chef Kevin and his wife Karen had bread and cup, and so I know a lot of viewers and listeners are fans. When you what was one of the more popular whiskey drinks? Was Old Fashioned the most popular?
We sold a lot of Old Fashioned.
Yeah, because you make a great Old Fashioned.
Yeah.
And as Kim said, if you want to review Chef Kevin's Old Fashioned recipe, you got to go back to the Thanksgiving 2019 edition. Anyway, that's it. Well, let's take a quick break and let's move to the next rye. Okay, welcome back. Hey, if you're just tuning in, we're sampling some fantastic rye whiskeys tonight at Chef Kevin Shin's portico in his back patio. And so before we get into the next sampling here, Drew, the reason that you're here, in addition to being the host of Beyond 2020, you've known Chef Kevin Shin for many years.
Yes.
And tell us the story of why.
Well,
how.
So two different quick stories. One about whiskey and one about when we first met Chef Kevin and his wife Karen. I don't remember. It was one of the first maybe week you guys had opened Bread and Cup, I think. And my wife stopped in there around lunchtime and was waiting for me. And by the time I showed up, she had signed a board, I believe. It was
right in front of the bar.
Yeah, right under the bar as
Katie
one of the
Bateman,
first
right there,
guests
I
right
remember.
there. So we went. I mean, we had lunch. We were out in Fallbrook, 5 minutes downtown, so we had lunch down there quite frequently. But the time how I got interested in whiskey and cocktails, more so than just having random ones here or there, and maybe being more particular about it, was actually one of the secret suppers, and it was the pork over the open flame one at the Nebraska Nursery, I think
Right.
was where it was at.
Right.
And Jill Coxon was there as the mixologist, and so my wife and I were
Shout out
standing
to
there.
Jill.
Yeah,
Another former guest on Pints
Oh,
and
she's
Pulp.
great. And
Yeah.
so she asked what I wanted. I was like, maybe something with bourbon. And she made me this great, I believe it was a Manhattan at the time. But, and that got me interested from then on in whiskey drinks. So.
Hey, how about that? We're all connected. Kim, did you ever get to go, you and Bruce, to Secret Supper?
No, unfortunately, we did not.
Yeah. All right.
Have heard many wonderful stories, and now it's a regret.
Well, you can still experience
Yes.
chef's food, and I don't know what my role is in that. But I'm just connecting people.
right.
All right, chef. What's
All
our
right,
next
our
rye?
second rye is has an age statement on it. It's a 10-year aged rye, but I bet you will notice a very distinct difference from the Sagamore. It's less bold, in my opinion. It's almost as if some of that essence has aged away. So that's why
I like this.
that's why I would say age statements aren't always a good indicator of what you're going to have, because you might find something that is 3 years old that tastes much better on your palate than something that's 10, 12, 15 years old. So don't just trust the label. Actually trust your palate. So
Is that different for rye than for other styles, or would you say that across the board?
I think it's probably like wine.
Okay.
Some wines age better, some wines don't. I don't, I'm not skilled enough to know if Scotch ages different than bourbon, than rye, than other spirits. But I just say trust your palate. And
Kim, in your travels, you and your husband, do you sample whiskey? How did you become a whiskey fan?
We were on a trip to Lexington, Kentucky, and we were at a restaurant there, and my husband asked the chef owner if they did bourbon tastings. He said no, but I suppose we could put something together. He started out he likes to tell the story at a $30 price range. Bruce said, well, what can you do for $40? And the chef's eyes lit up, and we sampled several, I think about a flight of 5 different ones, including one that is kind of a cult favorite, and that was the Papi Van Winkle. And it was very good, very expensive. I don't know that we need to go out and buy that one, but it was fun to try. And we've been back several times and have toured some of the distilleries, and it's just, I just got hooked.
Nice. Drew, you guys, when you still have small kids, so you
We do.
probably don't travel and go to those types of experiences.
Not as much. We waited a little while before we had kids, so we did some of that traveling, and then we have been to Scotland to
Oh yeah.
do some tasting with Scott. Well, that wasn't why we went to Scotland, but of course, while you're there, you got to try sample some different scotches. So, my wife honestly just kind of got into bourbon though, and whiskey. We watched
a lot of people got into bourbon, whiskey, and COVID.
That's true. That's true. We watched that documentary called Neat that's on Hulu, and when she kind of started hearing about how the flavors are brought out by the different trees that the barrels are made out of, and some of the natural components of it, she thought, hey, I kind of want to try this. So.
The national sales figures show that a lot of people got into.
Yeah. Well, this is fantastic.
Still a little hot.
Yeah.
Yes, it
but,
is.
But much more subdued in that bold grain.
And
essence.
again, it's Whistle Pig from
Shoreham, Vermont.
Vermont. Very good. All right. And so, check out Kevin's book. We'll have a link to tell you how to get that. But give us 60 seconds on why you wrote this book.
Well, at first, I was encouraged to write a book, and I refused because I thought, who wants to write a book? Who wants to read a book about a restaurant that failed? And as I thought about it, I came back to it about 6 months later and realized I was telling the wrong story. It wasn't a story about a restaurant that failed. It was a story about hope that pulled me through it and led me to create it in the first place. And so this book was a culmination of all of the hardship, all the difficulty, all the joy, all the reward, and that's why it's beyond just recipes.
It's a great,
Yeah.
having lived it with you, it's
Yeah.
it's a great read. Okay, what do we have?
Iowa Legendary, and it is legendary.
Oh,
Carroll, Iowa. Can anything good come out of Iowa? Well,
I don't know.
they can make
apparently,
Yeah.
apparently a damn good rye.
It's tasty.
rye. But all three of you immediately you smelled it and you agreed something's different.
Yeah, it's almost like a brandy.
There's
Caramel.
fruitiness to it.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's why I love delving into a singular item to find the nuance. And so this is now your third rye whiskey, and now it's very, very different.
it's
yeah,
tremendous.
but you're gonna get the almost the grape like brandy
Yeah.
fruit
Yeah,
to it. Yeah,
I hate to say this. I smelled butterscotch.
That's actually that's what I was going to say too.
Oh, good.
yeah,
yeah, I get that.
yeah. So there's a sweetness
Yeah.
to it
Yeah.
that's that wasn't present in the Whistle Pig or the Sagamore.
Oh yeah, that's
So
great.
that's why I chose these three. Is that you're now getting three different experiences and expressions of the same grain,
That's
just
awesome.
depending upon the distiller's magic. Yeah, it's difficult to find. You can special order it here in town from a place like The Still, but it is difficult to find. I don't know why.
Wow,
It's such a fantastic whiskey.
wow.
That was great.
So when I first sampled this, my memory trigger went back to childhood going into Durrell's feed store.
So tell us what this is.
This is Liberty Rye from Philadelphia. I believe it's from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
This is the one that you
This
mentioned.
is the one that set me down the path toward understanding rye.
That's so unique.
Yeah, but it took me back to his childhood going to buy chicken feed from Mrs. Durrell at Durrell's feed store.
Nice.
And I just smelled this graininess.
Can she be a sponsor?
Yeah.
Miss Durrell,
Would you call them?
Yes, I will.
Put them in as a sponsor? They got a mention on the podcast.
I don't think Miss Durrell is with us anymore. so
Oh well,
that was probably
maybe your
50 years.
ancestors.
That was about 50 years ago.
Wow.
But that taste and like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
That's the holy grail of tasting the pure essence of the grain as clear as you can. And that's why they found this recipe and nailed it.
Yeah.
And so talk about a great old fashioned, great Manhattan. It's really a great.
That's just fantastic.
Also impossible to find locally, but there are services I'll plug for free
Yep.
called Spirit Hub
Okay.
online. They carry a lot of boutique whiskeys, and that's probably the only way you can find them is through mail order services like that. It's how I found my favorite Irish whiskey.
Oh.
I couldn't find it in the country when I was there last year, but I could order it, and the shipping was more costly than the bottle.
Yeah.
The glasses. So, Drew, you mentioned that you got a nice Christmas gift of glasses. Tell us about that, and then let's talk about why these glasses.
Well, I don't remember what the name of the glasses is exactly, but it's a kind of a take on the same shape, so you get the scent when you drink it. But they're kind of a matted black with a glass liner, so when you put the whiskey in it, it kind of has a golden glow to it, and then it angles the scent back up to your nose while you're
Nice.
taking your sample.
Nice. Before we start to wrap up, Kevin, if I know our listeners and viewers, huge fans, and you've got a new project, and
I
we're
did.
sitting in that
We're
new
sitting in it,
project. So
right.
give us 90 seconds of what the portico's all about.
The portico is a one table a night culinary experience.
Right here.
Right here in my little backyard in Lincoln, Nebraska. 4 to 6 guests a night.
Four to
Four
six.
to six.
Yep.
And
Not 46.
No, 4 to 6. And the great thing about it is you're my only table for the night. I don't have to turn your table. I don't have to hurry you along. The average guest experience is 4.5 hours.
That's so. Just imagine a 4.5 hour experience
Right.
with you.
Yep.
From bread and cup days,
Start
just
to
sitting
finish.
down.
Cocktails to appetizer to multiple courses to dessert to amaro afterward to sit by the fire afterward if you
That's
like.
so cool.
So it's a full night experience.
And it is. It's become the underground, the newest underground restaurant in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And here, so we'll put links and how people can find you, but they damn well better be quick.
I'm filling up fast. And I only book 1 month in advance.
Okay, so we're shooting this towards the end of June. So if we want to go out to July, you'll take reservations through.
Right. So let's say someone sees this. It's July 10th. I will take reservations up to August 9th.
Okay.
So and then it just proceeds a day out per the day of that.
That's
previous
so
month.
great. Well, thanks for hosting.
My pleasure.
Drew, thanks for encouraging us to do this show. And thanks for your leadership in the Nebraska Optometric Association and all the great things you do for this city and Fallbrook. What a great community out in Fallbrook.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
And because your practice, you've been out there for
13 years, 13 and a half years. So yeah, no, it's a great area to get to know your neighbors. That's kind of the big thing out there is you actually interact with your neighbors a lot.
That's cool. And Kim Remington, out from behind the camera.
It's been fun. Thank you.
Well, again, thanks for encouraging us to do a show on whiskey.
Every time Drew would mention it, I would say, yes, Dan, we must do this.
So thanks to our sponsors, the Nebraska Horsemen. We appreciate their sponsorship. They're doing great things with here in the state. Thanks to Chef Kevin Shin and the Portico. Thanks to Andrew Bateman and Clear Vision Eye Care. Pints and Politics producer, Mr. Steve Van Hoosen. We never get to see Steve. Maybe someday we'll see Steve. Kim Remington, operations manager at Parsons Public Relations. The music that you're hearing right now, Pints and Politics theme music, Jack Rodenberg. Thank you, Jack, for your talent. Thanks to Fuse Co-working and Parsons Public Relations, and our guests, Chef Kevin Shin, Dr. Andrew Bateman, Kim Remington. Cheers.
Cheers.